Goines, a Kenyatta novel. Crime Partners, Chapter 3. Parked outside the dirty frame house were enough police cars to supply a small city with a complete police force. From unmarked cars to the quite visible black and white squad cars, the street was full of them, parked on both sides. To the passerby, it looked like a riot or something else as dangerous was about to happen. Police were everywhere asking questions of the people who gathered curiously in front of the small house. As each minute passed, more people arrived. It was as if someone was passing out free meal tickets or passes to the next World Series. Detective Benson stepped out on the sidewalk and took a deep breath. It was as though it was the first time he had been able to breathe fresh air since arriving and entering the house. He glanced back over his shoulder to see if his partner was coming. While he waited, two stretcher-bearing hospital attendants came out of the house carrying a sheet-covered corpse. The crowd of people milling around in front of the house got what they had come for. They fell silent as they watched the men carry the body and place it in the waiting ambulance. They had waited patiently to see death, to smell it, and then thank their lucky stars that it wasn't them on the stretcher. Benson stared out of the sea of black faces watching him. They were curious about him, another black man. Yet this was one that was on the other side of the line. There he stood behind the police line where only the so-called important people should be. Benson removed the cigarette and lit it slowly. One person in the crowd stared hard at the features of the black policeman. He took in the short natural hairstyle with its accumulation of straight gray hair scattered about. The next thing the watcher noticed was the chilling black eyes that didn't seem to be searching for anything in particular, but from strict custom were watching the crowd as if it was an enemy. The large nose gave credence to the rumor that there was an Indian blood in the man. His lips were the lips of a black man, covered with a heavy black mustache, and when he smiled, which was seldom, he revealed a large gap between his teeth that had been with him since a childhood accident. His shoulders were wide, tapering off to a narrow waistline, yet at sight of the man a person would think of strength. It wasn't because of his size, because he only stood 6'1", but because of the way he carried himself. He gave the impression of a coiled snake about to strike. From the burning intensity inside of him, he radiated strength and danger. Once again, Benson glanced over his shoulder to see what could be holding up his partner. He turned on his heel and started back toward the house. On the spur of the moment, his feet obeyed a flashing thought and he went around the side of the house. He examined the ground as he walked, looking for anything that might turn out to be a lead. At the rear of the house, he stepped over an overturned garbage can and glanced in the window. There was so much dirt on the windowsill that he knew at once that nobody had used this particular window in some time. By God, hold it, nigga, right there. The harsh southern voice filled Benson with a cold, murderous rage. Before he turned around and faced the man with the harsh voice, Benson fought to control his temper. He knew that if he turned around at once, he would end up taking the loud-mouthed officer apart. Put your hands up on that fucking wall, the officer ordered loudly. What's wrong, boy? You hard of hearing or something, nigger? The policeman continued as Benson refused to follow his demand. No matter what you did or what you became, the thought flashed through Benson's mind, you'd always be a nigger to some of these hillbilly bastards. The word didn't disturb him, but the tone of the voice the speaker used did. Even though he hadn't done anything, this bastard was ready to kill him. Benson didn't fool himself by taking any chances because he knew the officer standing behind him would do just that if he was given any kind of reason. That white bastard would take his life for no other reason except for the fact that Benson was black. Nigger, I ain't gonna waste my time telling you again to raise your arms and stretch out against that wall, the policeman stated coldly. For the first time since the officer had come up behind him, Benson started to speak. Listen, Mac, he began. I'm a detective with the 1st Precinct. My badge is inside my coat pocket along with my gun, so don't get carried away. He almost smiled in the dark, glad that he had been able to control his voice. The boiling, raging anger inside of him was mounting to an unbearable pitch, his anger and frustration like a deep river that was slowly rising. He knew he had to prevent it all. He knew he had to prevent it at all costs. He could not gratify his desire by taking it out on the ignorant bastard behind him. The sudden feel of cold blue steel being pressed against his back blew his mind. In another second he would have exploded into action, but the sound of a new voice arrested his action. Well, what do we have here? At the sound of the voice, Benson turned around and faced the 2 officers. The 1st policeman standing directly behind him started to get red in the face. By God, I thought I told you to put your fucking hands up against the wall, he snarled angrily. Benson didn't bother to glance at the new arrival. I don't know what they teach you new rookies, you dumb son of a bitch, but I've told you once that I'm an officer, a fucking detective at that. He glared at the man, his anger obvious to both of the uninformed men. Now, boy, and he dragged the word out, I'm going to take your badge number and see to it that your fucking ass is lit up for this shit you tried to pull on me back here. The red-faced officer was out of his depth. There was no doubt in his mind that the black man in front of him was what he said he was. He wished silently that he had pulled the trigger when he had the opportunity. Then it would have been just an accident, but now he didn't know where he stood. He glanced over at the other officer. It was his partner, true enough. But he didn't know how far his partner would go. He glanced down at the pistol still in his hand. All he'd have to do would be to pull the trigger. As if he had read the policeman's mind, Benson pushed the gun away. I don't like having guns pointed at me. He pulled out his wallet and flipped open the leather, revealing his badge. You, he pointed out at the new arrival. I want this man written up. With a nod of his head, he ordered the 2 men towards the front of the house. What's your name? Benson asked of the 2nd policeman. Kelly, sir, the young, boyish-looking officer replied quickly. Kelly silently thanked his lucky stars that he hadn't been in the rear with his partner. He didn't have to be there to realize what had happened. He had warned Jim, his partner, that his race hatred would get him in trouble. Nowadays you couldn't tell what a black man might be, so you didn't treat them all as if they were dirt. But he couldn't get it though, Jim's thick head. He couldn't get it through Jim's thick head. So he'd have to learn the hard way that those days of abusing every black person you came in contact with were over. As they approached the front of the house, a tall, blonde-haired detective came towards them. God damn it, there you are. I wondered where in the fuck you had gone. Benson didn't smile at his partner's approach. The frown on his face was one that Ryan was well familiar with. Both of you guys wait right here, Benson ordered sharply. Like hell we will, the officer called Jim stated loudly. I don't know when we started taking orders from you. Before Benson could reply, Ryan took it up. I don't know what the problem is here, son, but whenever a detective gives an order, it's generally obeyed by an officer. I haven't said anything, Kelly stated, trying to make sure he wasn't caught up in whatever was about to jump off. Benson pulled Ryan to the side and explained everything, even adding the thought that he had believed the officer would have shot him if it hadn't been for the arrival of his partner. As Benson talked, Ryan's eyes grew hard until they were mere pinpoints. He had worked with this black man for over 2 years now, and in that time they had both saved each other's lives on more than one occasion. As soon as Benson finished talking, Ryan whirled around on the 2 policemen. He told you once, Now I'm giving my order. I want both of you to wait right here until I speak with the captain. Ryan removed his pad from his pocket and wrote both the men's badge numbers down. In a few minutes, he was back walking along across the lawn. At the sight of Ryan's reappearing by himself, Jim felt a little better. They couldn't do too much to him for making a small mistake. How the hell could he tell that the nigger was an officer? One black face was like another as far as he was concerned. You know, Jim began, trying to appear friendly to Benson. This was a mistake any man could make. I mean, if I had been back there out of uniform, you would have probably made the same mistake, he stated, then laughed loudly. Ryan still had that cold look about him as he walked up. You boys can go about your business now. The captain said he'd like to see both of you downtown in his office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Then we can get to the bottom of this mess. Gee whiz, Kelly said over and over. I don't know anything about this crap. All I did was walk into the rear of the house to find my partner, that's all. You did more than you realized, Benson stated shortly. If you hadn't appeared when you did, I'm sure your partner here would have found a reason to shoot me. Oh, come on now, buddy. It wasn't that bad, and you know it. Why, it was only a mistake. I can't understand why you don't just let the matter drop. After all, we're both on the same side, right? Wrong. Your kind of man should never be allowed to wear a uniform. And I'm going to do everything in my power to see if I can't get you out of that uniform. Okay, you guys, we'll see you downtown tomorrow. Come on, Ed, Ryan said, using Benson's first name. Let's get on our way. We've got some murders to solve. Edward Benson slowly walked with his partner out to their car, which was parked at the curb. The two uniformed officers followed them closely. Man, oh man, you sure put your fucking foot in it that time, didn't you, Jim? Kelly stated matter-of-factly. All of the spades you had to run into, it would have been that guy there. Okay, Jim replied, but I don't see why it has to be so bad. That fucking guy ain't that much, is he? Kelly just shook his head as he watched the two men get in the unmarked car. How he wished that he was the one getting into an unmarked car and wearing plain clothes. Well, if he kept his nose clean, he would reach that goal one day. I don't know what to say, Jim. We can only wait until tomorrow and see what kind of charges they draw up against you. By God, Jim drawled angrily. I don't see how they can take a fucking nigger's word over mine. If they do, I'm damn sure working on the wrong job. Kelly only shrugged his shoulders. You dumb hillbilly bastard, he said under his breath. Maybe it will work out for the best after all, Kelly reasoned. He just might come up with a real intelligent partner. Someone he'd have something in common with. Neither detective spoke as Ryan pulled away from the curb. They had worked together so long that both men knew when the other was in a compatible mood. Ryan realized that Ed had been hurt tonight, even though he would never admit it. A fellow officer had disrespected him to the point where he was moody and dangerous. Brooding wouldn't solve it, so Ryan decided to try to take Benson's mind off his problem. Hey man, I'm going to need you on this case. We got 3 brutal murders on our hands, so come off it. You ain't got no goddamn kid, you know. When Benson didn't answer, Ryan continued. The way I got it figured, whoever the bastards were that did this shit, they tortured the kid to force information out of the parents. I don't know, Ryan. That's pure speculation there. I don't like it for some reason. It's too pat. Even when you theorize it like that, it jumps into a set pattern. The child was beaten, that's for sure. But tortured? Well, that's a different matter altogether. Benson slowly rubbed his nose. I examined the body closely, Ryan, and there was something there that I either overlooked or just don't have the knowledge to put it together. I want to look at the coroner's report first thing in the morning. I think, Ryan began, you're making a mountain out of a fucking molehill. Both the parents were drug addicts, so we got the reason for the torture. If torture was indeed used, next, if we find out if these people were dealing, the damn case will bust itself open. Drugs. That's the only answer. Drugs are the reason this brutal crime was committed, and I'll bet my check against a full bucket of shit. Benson glanced over at his partner. This case kinda hits you below the belt, huh, John? Ryan shrugged and answered, you know I got this thing about kids, Ed. I can't help myself. I love them. I don't care if they're brown, blue, green, or white. I love kids, period. Benson knew what his partner said was true. Sometimes after work, you could find Ryan in the nearest gym teaching young boys how to play basketball. It didn't make any difference what color the kid was. Ryan taught them all. You know, Ryan, it's guys like you that make me want to put a fuck on the whole white race. You good behavior guys, Benson laughed briefly. Yeah, I just know you do, Ryan answered quickly. The only thing in the white race you want to fuck is everything in a skirt. They laughed together. The tension had been broken. Ryan drove out to an all-night drive-in restaurant, and the two men sat in the car and ordered dinner. They remained quiet until after their food had come and gone. This is going to be kind of a hard one to bust open, Ed. We haven't found one good witness yet. I don't know about that, Ryan. If it's like you say, and I don't have any reason to doubt it, maybe the narcotics department can come up with some kind of help. Drug addicts aren't the most closed-mouthed people in the world. So suppose we put out the word. Just maybe somebody will talk. A killing like this can't remain quiet. Somebody, somewhere knows something. And if we push in the right direction, something will have to give. Ryan waited until after he started up the car and pulled out into the late night traffic. I pray to God that you're right about that, Ed, he stated. I want this one. I want it bad. I want those killers, and I want them as soon as possible.